playing some games with the economy. But again, it's not just about games. This is very serious issues that concerns people's lives, investments in the future. Okay, so let's get Babajide Ogunsanwo, who is a data analyst and the chief executive officer at the Fact Box, to get us into this conversation around the state of the economy, in particular, as we begin to look at how we've used monetary policies and fiscal policies, as it were, over the last year about, just recently, to get the economic growth up and running. Where are we? Of course, you heard the story that we just hinted about. Nigeria will produce will be the leading powerhouse for creating a new set of millionaires in dollar terms, those earning between $1 million and $35 million over the next 5 years, between now and the year 2023. That's according to a new report which came in just about a day or so ago. So just to keep it at the back of your mind, and I'm going to ask Babajide if he's one of those who will be the new multi-millionaires in dollar terms.
Thank you, Wilson.
How quick would you want to join the Millionaire in Dollars Club?
It'll be good to join the Millionaires Club, especially because I know you're in the Billionaires Club.
Not that I'm in the Billionaires Club, but potentially, those who are holding potentials rather than reality, from progress to promise, from promise to progress to performance. And that is the main discussion here. But it's very interesting. Talking about, I haven't seen this in years. I haven't touched it in years, really. Sometimes on the roadside when you're driving. So what is this about? That's the Ludo, right?
Yes, the Ludo. You know, we talked about billionaires and millionaires, but
yes,
here's the game most Nigerians are playing, the thousandaires. So you have most people that are thousandaires, not millionaires or billionaires in Nigeria. But I want to quickly share a short story with you, Bosun. As a young man, my grandfather taught me how to play this game. But here's what I learned. Most times, I lost the game. Probably won over 100 times when I probably just won thrice. Even though when I played, I rolled the big numbers. So most times I rolled 6.
Which is the highest number?
6, 6. So I was rolling the 6, 6, the biggest numbers. My grandfather kept rolling 6, 1, 3, 2, 3, 5, and he kept winning. And so he sat me down one day, Bosun, because I asked him, why am I not winning with the big numbers? And he said, Jide, sometimes you need big thinking, not just big numbers. So my grandfather taught me that sometimes big thinking is better than big numbers. And so today in the economy, the numbers are not big. GDP only 2%. So here's the question, the 3 questions we need to ask ourselves. Is the CBN thinking big? How can, again, millionaires and billionaires to be like you think big? And again, what can the thousands of Nigerians, the thousandaires, what sector should they look at that will provide them new opportunities? So the first is the CBN thinking big, Bosun. There are 3 things we need to look at. The policies over the last 4 years. May 2015, when the government came in, the monetary policy rate, what was it? 13%. So here's what the CBN did. It went for a pro-business policy. So we saw the monetary policy rate go from 13% to 11% in 6 months. So by November 2015, 6 months into this government, monetary policy rate declined. It came to 11%. That was pro-business, to encourage banks and industries to perhaps look for an opportunity.
That's not interest rate, is it?
So no, the monetary policy rate, not directly the interest rate.
Yes.
So we saw it decline.
That's been a 14%.
Yeah, that's been but it started, it moved from 13% and it dropped to 11%.
It's been quite a long time.
Oh,
Try to remember.
Oh, yes. So a lot of people.
Looks like a long time ago.
It does look like a long time. So we don't,
yes.
we've easily forgotten that the first step of the central bank was to try and promote a pro-business friendly monetary policy rate by a reduction in policy rate. But here's what happened. Between when it reduced the monetary policy rate in November 2015 to March 2016, there was large inflation. So the central bank was forced to move from a pro-business monetary policy rate to a pro-business policy rate. So in order to be able to reduce the growing rate of inflation, monetary policy rate was moved from 11% to 12% in March 2016. But then something strange happened. exchange rates went haywire. And so again, by November 2016, by July 2016, I mean, then monetary policy rate again was increased from 12% to 14%. But here's the good news. Between July 2016, the monetary policy rate and the cash reserve ratio has been stable. So we've seen stability in both key rates, the monetary policy rate and the cash reserve ratio rate, the cash reserve ratio. We've seen that stability from July 2016 till today. So that assists us to answer the question as yes, perhaps the central bank, through the government, is thinking big. We've looked at how they initially started with a pro-business monetary policy rate and then switched to a pro-business policy rate. And then right now we're at a pro-government policy rate to ensure that we're having inflation rate stability and exchange rate stability.
Yes, that's broadly speaking under what the central bank, or let's say every central bank, will call the banner of price stability. Right. But again, one of the key issues for the current central bank regime, and by extension, the government, the federal level, is the 41 items, and trying to re-engineer our thinking, our consumption, our whatever, when it comes to domestic production. So the central bank went through an approach that hadn't ever been used before, which is using the FX market to nip some items in the board, 41 items. I've been asking whether that could have been 50 or 100 or more, but now it's 42 with fertilizer. This was one much hated policy of Godwin Emefiele at the central bank. Now it looks like everybody's swallowed it.
Oh, yes. Again, let's not forget.
You want to roll the dice once again?
6-3. Again,
6-3.
Like I did with my grandfather.
Well,
I get the big numbers, but again, it's not about the big numbers, it's about big thinking. So the import and export window, is it big thinking? Oh, yes, it is. Remember this, Bosun. May 2015, external reserves was $28.5 billion. What is it today? Over $40 billion. So here's the lips of the question on the lips of most Nigerians. We've seen our external reserves grow by over $15 billion. But here's what bothers Nigerians. The list of 42 items that are restricted for official foreign exchange. So the question is, are we going to see more items on this list, or are we going to see fewer items on
Should
this
we
list?
see more? Would you like to see more?
I would like to see more. I would like to see more because of two things. The first is global economies are creating walls around their countries, which simply means it perhaps will be tougher for Nigerians that want to export products to find easy entry into these countries. And why should we keep importing products that we can produce in our domestic markets and create jobs for Nigerians? But however, Bosun, does this mean that all the decisions of the Monetary Policy Committee are perfect? No, it doesn't. And I'll share some of the imperfections with you briefly. But before I do so, there are 3 items on this list that have significantly changed the fortunes of millions of Nigerians. Let's look at one of those items, rice. Again, 4 years ago, our rice importation bill, Bosun, was over $1 billion.
Every year.
Every year. That has dropped to $19 million. In simple terms, the amount of money we spent 4 years ago importing rice for 1 month, we can use that same amount of money if we choose to import rice now for 4 years. Even if you also look at another item like sugar, we spent over $463 million importing sugar for your tea. That has dropped by half now.
I know you're going to talk about my cup of tea, but it's all right. That's my cup of tea.
That's your cup of tea?
Yes.
You should join me in this game.